Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to share with you guys my final thoughts on the Remette knives Urbane, however you would like to pronounce it. I'm going to be showing you guys a crap ton of knives and also letting you guys know right off the bat, this is actually a highly recommendable knife if this is the kind of look that you like based off of materials. The build quality is astounding for the price that this is coming at. Remette is a relatively new company that really got their feet on the ground this year, and I have had the pleasure of checking out a lot of their models, starting off when they were previously known as QIGMGS. At this point, I think I've handled basically everything they have, and I have content of multiple videos showing their just all the stuff that they have and how they've progressed through this year and showing the kind of stuff, machine work and materials that they use, just them flexing essentially, which in this industry, in this incredible hobby, being able to do incredible work lower and lower in price categories is extremely impressive and is actually a pretty big flex. So again, small company doing cool stuff, and I can speak from personal experience that they are very community oriented, and they, even though there's a language barrier, they seem to do a lot of communicating with people all throughout the hobby, especially people that actually are willing to show off their products and make a professional to semi-professional reviews. I wouldn't call myself professional by any means, but I have enough confidence to talk about fit and finish and use, of course. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with the price currently, and I will be linking this down below if it's something that you're interested in. It's $128.25. You can apply a 15% promotion code, so it brings that a little bit down. So essentially you're getting a whole lot of knife here just based solely off of the materials that they're using, and we'll go through those in just a second. For whatever reason, on the same listing, there's another Damascus knife of theirs that I just didn't really even know about, but I'm not willing to actually pick it up. If they send it to me, that's a different story, but this isn't my typical cup of tea. It really isn't. I like more modern materials, but I will say that the shape, the design, the execution, just overall, I really dig it. I think it's pretty freaking cool. We're going to do some size comparisons with my typical 6 size comparison knives. We're going to take the weight and then do a couple little things to hopefully just talk about this thing a little bit more and maybe see where this particular design or designs that can be spawned from this, where they can go. So 3 ounces. Quite impressive for the size of knife. It is definitely a medium sized knife. So let's go ahead and get this nice and centered. We'll start off with doing some wonderful Spyderco knives. This is the PM2. PM2 is just a little bit longer overall. Ooh. There we go. You got the Native 5 down here. Yep. So the Urbane is whole lot longer than the Native 5 for sure. Full size Doug Ritter RSK. The Wee Praxis. And then I have 2 more that are a little bit closer in size. This is the Civivi Vision FG. It is pretty freaking close, but the FG is just a little bit longer. Vision FG, excuse me. And then the Civivi Elementum, which is significantly shorter, as you can see. So I'm actually going to be keeping the Vision FG out for a little bit because the individual that I communicate with through Instagram messages and stuff like that, they made a comment saying that while this was in transit on the way to me, they told me that they're very excited for this model coming out, particularly because of the finishing work, the level of finishing that they've achieved on their blade material. What I was told was that the blade is real Damascus, and it is a blend of 9CR 18 or 15 MOV, so it is definitely on the lower performing side, but it's nothing to where like I would call it like junk blade material. Obviously, Damascus blade materials aren't performance based unless you're doing like Damasteel or Damacore or things, crazy high-end, super expensive things like that, working with crazy materials. This isn't that. This is merely just for visual aesthetic. And as I said in the beginning of this, pick it up if you like the look, and it's actually built really well. But me particularly, I would have rather just had a nice polished silver blade, or maybe something of kind of how Civivi did here. So this is, San My Construction. It has a polished Damascus. It's kind of like a sandwich material, so it's just on the sides. You can see based here on the spine that it's not wrapped around, it's really just like a sandwich. And then of course you have the budget cutting edge blade material here, and this is just for visual flair, of course. Now this entire blade is essentially what this is right here, so you can see where I'm trying to make that visual correlation, I guess. But their finishing work is actually quite beautiful on this, and I have been using it a little bit because of what this knife is really meant for. It is lighter duty. I wouldn't be prying or doing anything inappropriate with a knife of this design with the materials, but it could handle really everyday carry, minimal urban environment tasks. This isn't something that somebody who lives on a ranch and is wanting to do hard duty tasks. This isn't the knife for those kinds of things. So this is just for a urban everyday carry environment kind of knife. That's what this thing is really about. But my contact on Instagram told me that they believe that their finishing work of how they polish a blade is of a lot higher quality than Civivi, and I'm willing to say that I agree with them. Actually, the finishing, the polish, the way that everything is done on here, it's actually quite beautiful. Now the polishing on the blade, the finish on the blade, definitely contributes to having some of the most incredible action I've ever experienced at this price point. It is essentially drop shut, semi-controlled, but more on the drop shutty side. As you can see, it just kind of swings down. It has a very light detent as well, and also there isn't a whole lot of lock bar pressure being put on this because the liner here, it is titanium, and the relief cut, as you can see right there, is extremely thin. So that's going to contribute to having very light tension being put on by the actual detent as it rides down and eventually falls off to engage, excuse me. You have a couple different deployment methods, a lot of deployment methods, and that's one of the things I wanted to get into when it comes to the possible downsides or just visual aesthetic, I suppose. All the deployment methods work just fine when you get it right. Now, having the finish that is on this blade is going to make it a little bit slick feeling, but that's to be expected with a polished blade, of course. So it wouldn't really be different with any other manufacturer, honestly, unless they have really deep, fine jimping here. This is run-of-the-mill kind of jimping, but I'm glad that it's there at all. So there's here jimping here for the front flipper. Sticks out quite a bit. It's not too obtrusive, but it works. It works pretty darn good. And of course, light detent, polished blade, nice and smooth, ceramic bearings, and I believe a Teflon cage. It's just, yeah, the excellent on this is quite the excellent on this excuse me, the action on this is quite excellent. Here on the back you have a little flipper tab, and honestly, I think that this knife would have been a little bit better if it was simplified a little bit, because there is a lot going on. Visually speaking, there's a shit ton of stuff going on here. I think that if they didn't have the flipper tab at all, this would have been a much cleaner design. So this is staying in the collection, and eventually when I get the proper tools, I will eventually do a flipper tab delete on this. Now I would think for a second that maybe I might ruin the closed position lockup there, but as you can see, the stop pin is right back in there. And if I chop off the flipper tab right there where it levels out to create the face of the open position lockup, I'm kind of avoiding the stop pin, so I'm not too worried about that. I would definitely suggest that this just not come with a flipper tab at all, or a rear flipper tab. The front flipper, it works excellent, honestly, and without the rear flipper here, I think it would just make the overall design look cleaner in the closed and open position. Of course, that is of course just a visual nitpick preference. That's just me, but functionally wise, it's perfectly fine. You have titanium studs on either side, and they are not super sharp, but they're grabby enough to deploy the blade quite reliably. Sorry, that was me. You also have a hole that could be a little tricky to get to, but I don't have that much, I guess, of a problem getting to it. You can, I suppose, slow roll it like that. It's more for visual aesthetic, I guess, just to give a little bit more intricacy to the blade as is. It's not fully flat ground. It does kind of look like it, but if I kind of tilt this at a different angle, you can see that there is a flat up here about, I would say, I don't know, a third of the overall height of the blade. So cutting performance based off how thin this is and behind the edge, it's going to be really as good as anything else that is around this size. I wouldn't say it's super slicey, but because, again, the finish that's on the blade, it moves the material rather well. Now, I haven't sharpened this yet because I haven't used it enough to justify sharpening it, but I would say that, how this is so similarly shaped to the Vision FG, this is an incredible blade to sharpen for people who are professionals or people who are learning to practice sharpening knives. It is a very, very just gradual bellied knife. There isn't any like weird stuff going on. There isn't really anything in the way. So this would be what I'm assuming is a very easy blade to sharpen. You have here a kind of modified reverse tan toe, sheep's foot, whatever you want to call it, camel toe freaking blade shape. I doesn't really need a name, but it's a very utilitarian friendly knife because you're able to go, and it has a super low tip just like that Vision FG, and you're able to do a lot of score cuts and just do more precision cutting there. Now talking about everything else. So here you have a popsicle milled titanium clip. It has a bead blast kind of stone washy looking finish. It looks kind of in between, but leaning towards more the bead blast finish, which I prefer. Stone wash, kind of like how it's done on this. This is a great example of a beautiful stone wash on tie. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think it would have been cool on this, but they were going for a more polished look, of course. But the finish on the clip kind of stands out because everything else is just so polished looking, even the actual faces of the hardware. Now, all the external hardware that you can see, including the bolsters and the studs, they're all titanium, which is excellent. They are all T6, but I will say that they're deep enough and they do feel pretty darn good. Still don't like T6, but I'm gonna give it a pass because the hardware is actually deep enough, and I didn't feel like I was gonna strip them or slip or anything like that. So good hardware. You have a little titanium backspacer piece here. It says Remette stamped on there. Didn't need to be there, but it doesn't bug me at all. I'm just glad it wasn't on the blade. They keep the blade and everything else pretty sterile. That's honestly probably about the safest place they could have put it, but it could have been done without. You do have a little steel lanyard pin there, so if you want to tie a little lanyard to this, you can. So it's nice that they do that for people who like lanyards. I have taken this apart probably about 3 times just to mess around with the strength of the detent. I finally found my sweet spot, And even still, after all that manipulation and taking it apart and putting it back together, it's still centered up extremely easily, and it is still perfectly centered. And one thing I do definitely appreciate that I could say that is a fix versus some of their previous models that they released around the same time, the blade actually has a healthy amount of space from contacting the backspacer in there. That's an issue that I noticed that was on the Rhino. Now, this is the first edition of the Rhino. They've since changed it to a button actuated or button disengaging inset liner lock. That's the new version of the Rhino. This is the older version where it's just a simple plunge lock. I like it. It's just fine for me. But impulsively, I do want to pick up the new one. But the way that this blade is shaped and the tolerances on this, the actual cutting edge does come in contact with the micarta backspacer on there. It's very difficult to see, but there is a tiny little line that splits about maybe like an inch worth of the actual material there. So that's a fit and finish thing, right? That's a yeah, just tolerances. Here, thankfully, they got it right, and I really appreciate that. So it seems like with every new model that comes out, they're correcting a lot of these little things. But what I would suggest is probably spending a little bit more time in the prototyping phase. Maybe not, just, giving out a bunch of their knives to people. But, it doesn't really take much time interacting with a piece to be able to see what could possibly be wrong with it, whether it comes to safety or a design flaw or something like that. So safety wise, one thing I did want to mention is that you can see the very tip there, and looking at it, it's barely right beneath the lip of that backspacer piece there. If you had long enough nails, you might be able to pick that out, but trying to get it to snag on your skin, not possible unless you like chip the crap out of the tip and have to sharpen it so far back. Then yeah, maybe, but at that point that's kind of your fault. You're in your problem at that point. But as it is brand new and with typical use, proper use, you won't sharpen enough of that material back to eventually be able to pick out that tip. So safety wise, yeah, this is great. Also, it is open here in the back, and you can see the live edge back there. And even if I stick the side of my finger in there, I can't squish it down enough to touch that live edge. So that's excellent. I love that as very safe. So let's talk about the materials that they're using here externally. So I already talked about the titanium hardware, the backspacer clip, the bolsters here. These things are pretty darn cool. They are titanium. It's polished on the outside. It is contoured. They are not flat. It's a slight contour. It's nothing, super dramatic. But what is kind of dramatic is this plant and vine pattern that they have milled. And maybe I wouldn't call it milled because it doesn't look too sharp and prominent. It looks a little bit more like it was pressed in a way. I don't know how that actually works. I'm not sure if you can press titanium at this thickness, possibly. But I'm going to go ahead and say that it was just milled in, some light milling, and then, polished over so you can see the I guess the finished differences between what used to be a typical raw stone wash or bead bust finish and then polished over the surface. So it's a cool look if this is what you like, but I do have a lot of other knives that I would suggest that this design could actually be a little bit more appealing to I don't want to say a younger audience, but a more modern appreciative audience. This is more old school looking. You have the floral and vine bolster, and then you have wood. Now the wood that they're using is a very hard wood. I don't believe it's gonna really swell in basic use. It is desert ironwood, and while I'm not an expert in wood materials, I'd say it is finished rather well, and each piece is going to be unique. So that's something that's actually kind of cool. So you get some little dark pieces here. It's a light up there. On this side over here, it's a little bit darker. And yeah, just you have the stripes and whatever. looks cool if this is the kind of look that you like. Now, internally speaking, I do want to say that I very much appreciate that there is a hardened steel insert with a what's called a ceramic detent ball. The hardware that's inside of the knife, you have to remove the wooden scales, and then the bolsters are machined in such a way that they kind of just press on and you move up or down to, you know, remove them. It's very crafty how they've done it all. I've never seen it before, but I'm sure it's been done before, just maybe more on the custom end, which is pretty cool that they've achieved it as well as they have. So I do like there's a good bit of intricacy in this, and at this price point, it's pretty freaking cool. You do have some relief right there and on the other side, so it feels very comfortable. It is a very thin liner, but the tension, as I mentioned before, because of the relief right there, it's extremely light and easy to disengage. Now, this isn't a knife that you want to go and do hard stuff with. I did spine whack it. It survived just fine with zero lockup issues or creating any kind of lock rock. So side to side, solid as can be. Up or down, pretty darn good for what it is. I wouldn't try to actually, like, you know, try to freaking break this thing. You know, you'd probably be able to mess up that liner there, but for what it is, everything is done rather well. One thing I did want to mention, and I can't really show you guys this because I'd have to actually take the knife apart, and it's going to make this video 20 more minutes longer than it actually needs to be. It looks to be like there was a lot of like blemishes that were just kind of like blasted over with a finish on the inside, so you can't see them externally, but it was either this side or the lock bar side that just had some weird like waves in the titanium. It wasn't the best looking finish on it, but that's something that I felt was worth mentioning. Maybe it could have just been my unit. I got this really as soon as it became available, so maybe in the ones that are being produced after, the QC is a little bit better on it. So that's something I wanted to mention. There was just some weird like bubbly, wavy looking marks on the titanium, and it looks like they just kind of like sandblasted over it or bead blasted over it. Oh yeah, okay, so this is pretty much the end of it, but I did want to say that the design in use in carry is excellent, but the materials that are being used here, they are kind of old school. Now, what I would suggest for Remette to do is to change up the materials and the finishing work that they've done. Now, they've been able to do a lot of cool stuff. They have two titanium premium button lock knives that I have shown off on the channel, so if you'd like, go ahead and check them out. One of them was a WD-107. It was carbon fiber and milled titanium. That was beautiful. The execution of those materials were awesome. That could have been done on this. It wasn't. The Steed, the Remette Steed, it had inlays. The inlay work is incredible. And actually, Metal Complex, I'm sure many of you guys know him already or are following him, he actually just got in some new knives from Remette. So they sent him some stuff to check out. And even he was very impressed with their tolerances when it comes to doing inlays on both sides of the knife. I had the Steed for a little bit. I've since sold it off to, you know, get new stuff into the channel. But that was beautiful. The execution of the titanium, the way they finished it, and those inlays, gorgeous. At the price that they were bringing it at is incredible. Now, what I will say is, based off of what I know they can do, this should have been brought to the market with some material options. I know they're a small company, and I hope that this coming year they continue making this model. You know, even keeping the dual flippers, the front flipper and the rear flipper, all the crazy deployment methods, keep everything as is, but offer some cool milling materials. I'm talking about like diagonal milling, like here. This is so faint, but it's something that enthusiasts really appreciate. This is on a Tucson model. So this for that would have been beautiful. Even here, another example. This is, you know, very well contoured. This is on a Migron knife, even more faint than on the Tucson, but they're pretty darn close. That would have been really nice. And you know what? Like, I'm not expecting them to do anything crazy like what's here on the Lizard Skin TRM knife. This is the Neutron 2, but I'm sure eventually they can do something that maybe not there and maybe not too far there, but somewhere in this middle ground. That would be just freaking sexy. It really would be. Here's another knurled knife over here. This is the Buzz by Devo Knives. These are some custom aftermarket scales. Well, they were offered by Devo Knives for a short period of time. But these are knurled, so they're just really, really fine micro mill tie. I'm not expecting them to do this, but that would be pretty freaking cool. And they clearly have, you know, the access to doing micarta. Now their fit and finish work when it comes to micarta, it's a little spotty, but I think it would still be pretty cool if they got micarta instead of the wood there, or just G10, you know, just to keep this in a reasonable price range. If they did some micro milled tie in a more modern pattern, put it on the clip possibly, or not at all, it's fine, but used some, you know, good looking G10 in different colors, or even micarta, finished, you know, with different colors possibly. I think that would be excellent, and that this model would definitely be a little bit more long-lived and received well, at least visually, by a lot of other channels. This is something that isn't gonna last too long, and unfortunately it can't really be appreciated by a lot of people, because just based off what this thing looks like, this is a very difficult color scheme and pattern to sell, especially nowadays in this hobby with so many other incredible options. But I know they can do it. I absolutely have faith that they can, and I'm very excited to see what Remette brings to the table in 2024, this next coming year. 2024? Yeah, that's okay, sure. That's pretty much it. I'll be linking this down below if you guys are interested. If it's something you're kind of on the fence about and you got the money burning hole in your pocket, pick it up. It's actually really impressive, and it's a wonderful use knife. So it's just a little bit on the unique side, I suppose. If you guys like this video, go ahead and leave a like down below. If you are subscribed, thank you so much. I appreciate all your support and your patience. Of course, if you are not subscribed, consider subscribing, because I plenty more videos and content coming your guys' way. Make sure to turn on your notification bells, because I've been having some people telling me that they don't know when videos come up, and I can be a little spotty when it comes to releasing stuff. Sometimes I'm daily, sometimes I'm, you know, once or twice a week, sometimes I'm once a month. So it is what it is. But with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day.